All right, now let's try to find the derivative of the inverse sine. And the process is just going to be pretty much the same as the process we use for the inverse tangent, okay? So, if you want to try this on your own, feel free to pause the video and try it on your own. But we're going to start by using the fact that the sine and the inverse sine are inverses of each other, obviously. So the sine of sine inverse of x is equal to x, right? We're going to take the derivative of both sides like we've done before. Sine of sine inverse of x is equal to the derivative of x. We're going to use the chain rule now. So the derivative of sine is cosine. So we're going to have cosine of the inverse sine of x, right? And then we have to multiply by the derivative of the inside, right? So multiply by dx of the inverse sine of x, right? Which is what we were trying to find. And then that's just going to be equal to 1. So now we're just going to divide both sides by the cosine of the inverse sine to find that dx of the inverse sine of x is equal to 1 over the cosine of the inverse sine of x. Okay? Now, just the same as we did before, we're going to get rid of those trig functions by using a triangle. All right, so let me scroll down here a little and scroll down this a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to let theta be the inverse sine of x, right? Because the inverse sine takes a sine value and gives us the angle that has that sine value. And this is equivalent to saying that the sine of theta is equal to x. Okay. All right. So we're going to draw a triangle like we did before. Okay. I'm just going to draw a random right triangle. And I'm going to call this angle theta. Now, the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, right? So I'm going to, and x is x over 1, right? So I'm going to call the opposite side x. And now I'm going to call the hypotenuse 1. And then I can find the third side with the Pythagorean theorem, right? I can just take, it'll just be the square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay? So that means that, I'll just write it down here, the cosine of theta is equal to the square root of 1 minus x squared, right? Cosine of theta, it's just the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So it's that over 1, which is just this. When we divide by 1, it doesn't change anything. So now we can replace that cosine of the inverse sine, right? Because this is theta, right? That's theta. That's what we called theta. So we can now say that the derivative of the inverse sine of x is equal to 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared. All right, we got another one down. So I'll see you in the next video and we'll practice using these inverses, because now once we've got these inverses for the natural log and the inverse tangent and the inverse sine, right? Now we can just memorize those formulas and then use them and combine them with a chain rule, the product rule, quotient rule, and so on.